أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم من همزه ونفخه ونفثه بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسولنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. Uh, so this is the rebranding of our series that we had promised in the beginning that we said was something that's going to come up in the future, and we're going to be applying one of the strategies that we talked about, and that was reframing everything, right? So in this context, this would be reframing the series. So this was what we had mentioned before, and so now we have reframed it, rebranded it, so that we can look at challenges and struggles in a different perspective. So in the beginning, we said growth through struggles, but now we're changing the word struggles into challenge, right? Struggles has often a negative connotation, where there's difficulty and stress and all that. But when you reframe it as something that's more positive, so in this case, challenge, right? Then in that case, it becomes something that is more empowering, essentially, right? And this is something that's going to help you stay motivated. And we said from positive psychology that positive psychology deals with things that are above uh, above the like a baseline normal as opposed to going below it. And the earlier framework of psychology was with the frame with the mindset that if you have problems, then you're going below the baseline, and that means you're going negative, right? But positive psychology is focused on strengths. So it said, no, what we're gonna do is we're gonna have strengths that are going to be our focus, and weaknesses are going to be classified as just closer to the baseline but not below the baseline. So if you're going through some struggles or difficulty, in this context, that would be that okay, some of the skill sets that you have may be at level 1 instead of level 30 that they might need to be at. So instead of looking at it in a bad way, you can reframe it and say, well, it's just a matter of me working on those lower level skills and getting them to be higher, right? So this is the reframing of this whole thing. Now, one of the things that's going to be distinct in here is that we're going to focus on application of these things, right? So stories. So stories of transformation of people in the past, in the present, and so on, that are going to help you sort of personalize this experience. A lot of times, when you listen to stories, you become empowered. There's this thing between, or there's this idea that if you have numbers, right? If you're told that 1 million people are going through a certain situation, but you don't know any of their names, then that number is meaningless. But when you add meaning to it by adding something that you can connect with, you add a name to it, you add a storyline to it, you add parents, you add struggles and so on, then it becomes a little bit more enticing for you to get involved in whatever that situation might be. So this is one of the things that we're going to do, and it's also good for us to have reference points, like the Prophet ﷺ himself used stories to help him stay motivated. Bi'idhnillah. So moving forward, a quick review on this. Objective review, meaning sort of like what we discussed overall, and some Q&A if you have any questions and answers from the previous sections, or the previous section that we covered all these things in, then we can do that before we move on, inshallah, to the feedback question that comes up all the time. I don't know if you guys can see me. Uh, I do have I'm sharing this, but I'm not sure if you can see it, if you can see me. In any case, um, the objective review plus Q&A is what we're going to do now, and that is truths, capital T truths, which is reality, and we mentioned that small T truths are perceptions of reality. So on that note, we focused on how learning works. We said that learning works with whatever information that you've accumulated, whether it's experiences, whether it's schooling, whether it's what people have said in the culture, whether it's what your parents have taught you, whether it's whatever, right? All of these things are what sort of come together and it can be classified as learning, the learning experience overall. So this is the sources of biases and perceptions and so on, right? And again, biases we mentioned are not only negative. They could be good biases. They could be bad biases. And we did an activity before. If you had gone through the previous videos, the activity involved looking at different, pictures and the initial reaction that you have to them. For example, if somebody's holding a gun, the initial reaction is that you get a little bit sort of like tense or worried, or you're thinking that this is a person who could harm you and so on because you see a gun there. So that kind of bias is good because then you can take protective measures against that, right? And then there's negative biases, which can be like negative stereotypes and so on. And I'm adding the word negative as a qualifier because again, you need to be aware that some things are good and some things are not good, and our learning process is constantly evolving, or the learning experience is continuously is being expanded, right? And what that means is that as we learn more information, as we learn new things, then it keeps adapting or it keeps shifting or sort of like um, uh, optimizing in a way, meaning like yeah, it's not optimizing, it's growing. So you're learning more things, and so now you're modifying what you had learned previously, or you're expanding on it, right? Modification can be increasing or decreasing. It could also be changing things something completely. So that's that. And then decisions and interest are based on this perception that we have, this schema that we have of different things in different contexts. We mentioned the line of best fit. On a given topic, for example, you have a certain amount of information, and so you're going to make your decisions based on that. But as you get more information, you might make different choices. And this is something that helps us in terms of continuous growth. If we had sort of maxed out, we would sort of just kind of be stagnant, right? And we mentioned neuroplasticity, and this is what I was mentioning. Your brain constantly adjusts itself. So this is something to keep in mind. Higher objectives of Sharia, we talked about this as the capital T truths, and we said that this is what Sharia, which is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us about what He wants us to do, and this is this is the reality of how the world works, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us the system of how the world works by by giving us certain instructions and guidance and so on. And if we adhere to that, then we're going to be able to have happiness and contentment and so on. In this context, higher objectives of Sharia, we only focus on the lower most, the most essential ones, and that is the five of protection of wealth, protection of intellect, protection of deen, protection of honor and lineage, and the other one was protection of life. Yes, so protection of life. So these are the five that Islam aims to make sure that are preserved and so on. So when we understand that Islam is based on this mindset, these five things, for example, the most essential things, then our mindset is going to become uh, our mindset is going to accommodate learning about Islam more frequently, so that we can continuously learn things that are capital T truths. So in this case, for example, certain laws are in place, certain punishments are in place in Islam. But if we understand that the objective is to save life, right, then in that case, we're going to be like, okay, in that case, this punishment of, for example, the punishment of murder, right? In Islam, the punishment of murder is that you can get yourself killed as well, right? In compensation for you killing somebody else, you could also get the same punishment. Now, if the family of the victim decides to forgive you, that's great on their behalf, but it's not a requirement on their behalf, right? But what it does is that if you know as a killer that you're gonna get killed in return, you're more likely to not do it. In other words, it acts as a strong deterrent. When you know that your hand is going to get cut off, it acts as a strong deterrent. And the punishment in Islam are steeper and greater when the crime is done that is greater, right? So in this case, if you're going to steal somebody's property or somebody else's belongings that they worked hard for, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not want that to happen, and so He has instituted a punishment for that, that if you like go beyond a certain threshold, then you're going to have your hand cut off, and of course after a due process and so on, right? But this is a punishment that acts as a deterrent, because if you know this is going to happen and there's no playing games with it, and it's like you will lose a limb, you will lose your life, then you're not going to do it. And what that does at the end is protects people's properties, protects people's lives, protects people. A lot of these things are going to be the benefits of such deterrence, right? So on the one hand, somebody might say these are extreme, punishments and so on, but they're not intended to be punishments in themselves, and that's it. They have a higher objective, which is to protect everyone in society. And so if you look at it from that perspective, you're going to actually appreciate these punishments, because you know that they're as such big deterrents, that they're not going to people are not going to do these things, right? And so you're going to feel more safe and content and so on in your life, and therefore you're going to be able to continue moving forward in the things that you got to do, right? For example, the punishment of a person who lies and claims that a woman who is innocent of zina, for example. In the beginning of Surah An-Nur, the first page of Surah An-Nur, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about this, that whoever it is that comes in and like he just claims that this woman has committed zina, but he doesn't have proof for it, he doesn't bring witnesses and so on, right? He doesn't have actual evidence and stuff, right? Then this person gets a certain punishment. And this person who gets this punishment needs to be witnessed by a group of people. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلِيَشْهَدْ عَذَابَهُمَا طَائِفَةٌ مِّنَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ, that let a group of Muslims, believers, uh, witness this punishment, because it'll act as a deterrent now, right? And so you're not gonna take these things lightly, because the honor of people is very important in Islam. So you're not gonna play games with that. You're not just gonna accuse people of different things. And on the receiving end, or on the other end, the person who is now therefore not being accused of these things is gonna feel more content, more happy, more positive, and so on. Now, if you know, for example, from the experience with bullies and the Me Too movement and so on, the Black Lives Movement recently, right? The entire process is focused on things that are happening that are hurting other people. And so, if these punishments, for example, were instituted, or at least like instituted meaning like they were in place, then and they were actually enforced when the time was right, in proper conditions and so on, right? Then in that case, people would be more worried about doing these kinds of things. And there was a survey, or there was like a research done on like the crime, and they were doing different comparison of different crimes in Saudi and over here in America. They're just doing like numbers wise and stuff. So how much crime is happening in America, how much crime is happening in this other country, and they were analyzing this based on in the context of what kind of punishments are instituted in both places, right? There's a prison system over here that sort of like locks you up for life or for a long period of time, and confines you under like certain conditions, and it's targeting a specific group of people as opposed to everyone and stuff, right? So in America, that causes a lot of problems, and it becomes a thing where a person who gets into the system sort of ends up getting stuck in the system, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not want that. That's not the intent over here, because it can also serve as a sort of torture, right? And it's also harmful to people and so on. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not want this to happen. And so, anyways, that this is the sort of like the framework that Islam presents to us. And if we understand that, then we start appreciating like Islam, and then we start wanting to learn more about it. So this becomes our capital T truths, to which we align ourselves as much as possible, to which we align our small T truths as much as possible. And the more we learn about the capital T truths, the more we're able to align ourselves accordingly, so that we're able to live a life of contentment and happiness and satisfaction and so on, right? So that's that. Now, sources of conflicts are, again, when we disconnect ourselves from the capital T truths, and we sort of want our own truths to become reality. And we gave an example of that of, for example, if a person wants, let's say uh, they want like they want traffic lights, let's say, to turn green, and another one wants somebody else wants the traffic light to turn red, okay? And so you'll have like this flashlight, like the flashing lights sort of like going like from green to red, green to red, they're just going to be oscillating because everyone wants something different, right? But if you want to have something like even more broad in terms of like like an example, you can say, for example, um, what kind of weather it should be, right? So the temperature could be, for example, at 79 degrees, it could be like 53 degrees, it could be like negative 500 degrees or whatever. It could also have simultaneously rain, sleet, sunny. It could have no clouds, you could have partial clouds, it can have all those different combinations. So imagine if different people had different ideas of what kind of weather they wanted, and they wanted to happen, and that's it. Now, if the weather didn't happen and only one type of, one combination of weather events took place, then in that case, everyone else is going to feel sort of deterred, because you're going to be like, well, my thing didn't happen. But if you think about, if everyone's things happen at the same time, imagine the chaos that would happen. Like, you wouldn't know what to do, because it's raining at the same time, and it's flooding at the same time, but it's also like really hot at the same time, and it's really sunny at the same time, and it's also like freezing at the same time. It's all, like, it would be all crazy, and then just keep oscillating. So the conflicts that we have are derived from our disconnection from the capital T truths. When we want our perceptions to become reality, and they're not reality, it's like us being stuck in a maze, and we're sort of like wanting things to work out our way. We go to a maze wall, part of it, and we just start like trying to like hope that this becomes a door, and we're just like really upset if it's not becoming a door, because we want things our way, right? But in reality, the way that we actually do things, right? And we sort of like adapted to it, is we sort of adapt whenever we're happy and we're sort of content. Whenever we take things for granted, it's when we've sort of like accepted them as facts, right? For example, you've accepted as fact that in the morning at a certain time the sun is going to come up. We don't sit there and try to say, no, the sun should come at a certain different time, right? We don't do that, because we sort of adapted to it. We know that I'm sitting over here, for example, because I have like, I know that gravity is pulling me down. And if it wasn't for the gravity pulling me down, I would sort of start floating around. But I've taken it for granted because I've accepted that as a reality, right? So my small T truth has aligned with capital T truth. So I'm sort of, happy and I'm good to go. I'm content. I'm satisfied. I know at a certain time I'm gonna get hungry. I'm gonna want to eat. So I'm gonna prepare myself mentally towards it, right? So I might go to a restaurant. I might eat at home. I might cook something else or whatever. I can sort of align myself accordingly. So I'm not upset. But imagine if you were sitting and then suddenly gravity like started like pulling, like it just stopped and then you started floating up in there. You're gonna get frustrated. You're gonna have like these issues and stuff, and you're gonna be like, what's happening? You're gonna be frustrated. So when we align our perceptions, we accept the reality and we align our capital T truths with that, then it makes it a lot easier for us to navigate forward. And so on this topic is also motivation. So we mentioned motivation is composed of three things: autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And we said that it's coupled with discipline. So autonomy is when you feel like you are able to make your own decision. Like you can recite whatever surah that you want to recite after Surah Al-Fatiha. You can eat what kind of food that you want, except certain foods that we can't eat, right? But you sort of have the autonomy to be able to pick between different things. You also feel competent, you feel mastery in being able to do certain actions, right? So you're going to feel more motivated. If you feel like I can't do something, you're not going to feel more motivated. You're just going to get overwhelmed and you're going to just give up, right? And so our idea over here in the transformation mindset is going to be on this, especially the idea of mastery. You only do the things that you feel competent in, and you sort of challenge yourself, and so you can keep moving forward. You don't do the things that are overwhelming because that's going to obviously overwhelm you and demotivate you. So we're going to focus on breaking things down and sort of like taking big projects and dividing them into smaller goals so that we can then act according to those goals because we're going to feel that we have mastery. We feel competent enough to complete these tasks, but they're also part of bigger tasks. And we mentioned the example of having money. Like you want to be a millionaire, so you're earning, let's say $40,000. Let's say 40,000, right? Let's say $40,000 a year, right? In 10 years, you're gonna do $400,000, yeah, and then in 30 years you're gonna have $1.2 million. So you still got the $1 million. It just you broke it down into chunks. But if you were sitting there trying to make money like $1 million on the spot, like the first day that you started working, then obviously you're gonna get overwhelmed because that's not how reality works, right? So you're gonna go to a casino, for example. You're gonna try to like get like money like through that, or you're gonna go to buy a lottery ticket and stuff. You're gonna try to do those things. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forbade that because of the negative consequences, because that's not how reality works, and you're going to lose a lot of money and stuff. And there's all this ambiguity that's going to overwhelm you and frustrate you and annoy you and stuff, right? You're spending money, you're not winning because your luck is not there. You're going to feel demotivated. Man, I didn't get this again. And then you're going to like do the slot machine again, and you didn't get it again. You're going to get more demotivated and stuff, or you're going to like, buy these lottery tickets and you're like, man, I was so close. It's not happening. My life must be a failure and stuff like that. This is what happens. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not want that to happen. So that's not what he's going to let you do. So those things are not allowed for us. And because there's a lot of ambiguity and there's a lot of uncertainty and there's like gambling, right? So that's why these things are not allowed for us. Okay, and then purpose, you have to know why you're doing something. If you don't have a purpose, you're just sort of wandering aimlessly, right? That you're gonna get, I know you're gonna give up eventually because you're like, I don't know what I'm doing. Why am I doing this? This is something that a lot of people have. They call it midlife crises. Midlife crises, you're sort of like stuck. I don't know what I want to do it, or like you're like, I don't know how I'm gonna navigate. I don't know, like you're sort of like confused, pretty much, right? So this is where purpose helps you stay motivated. You know exactly what you want. You know exactly when you want it. You're sort of navigating towards it, but this has to be aligned with reality, capital T truths, right? It can't just be like something disconnected. Like you want, like let's say you want, I don't know, like uh, you want a flying dragon, okay? And then he's like, this is my purpose. I'm going to keep going and like searching all over the world for a flying dragon. And those flying dragons don't exist unless you're talking like a dragonfly, right? But if you're looking for like a fire breathing and like flying dragon and stuff, and you're just looking all over the world for it, you're like, this is my mission, right? But if it's not aligned for with reality, obviously that's not going to happen. You're going to get demotivated because you're not going to find it, right? So this is important. That purpose has to be there, but it also has to be aligned with capital T truth. And then you have discipline. That's just a scientific way of analyzing and processing yourself to make sure that you're systematically moving forward toward your end goal, right? And that's what we're going to talk about in a little bit, inshallah. And then positive psychology or the growth mindset, right, is where you sort of mentally focus on your strengths and you look at your weaknesses as still positive above the the baseline, like, let's say you were born, this is your baseline, and then kind of like, increasing your strengths from there. We don't look at things from a, in a negative way, like you're regressing necessarily to whatever it was like before you were born. But what you're going to sort of like frame this as, okay, I have this weakness that is like, relative to my strengths. If my strengths are those things that are at level 50, right, my weaknesses are those things that are a little bit less than that. So those are my relative strengths and weaknesses, and this is going to help me so that I can work on those things. I say, very objectively, I'll look at it and say, okay, well, I think I'm not really good at this, so let me work on this a little bit. Maybe if it's a matter of reciting Quran, for example, maybe my like recitation isn't as good as I want it to be, but it's not a failure, right? It's not like, I'm not going negative, right? But so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, let me work on that a little bit. Let me practice that specific aspect so that I can improve it, so I can make that again into something that's relatively a strength. So this is how I frame everything. Positive psychology is focused on the growth mindset, this idea of like strength-based efforts that I put into whatever I'm doing. And flourishing is to make sure that you align yourself to whatever the bare minimum is. You keep yourself above the bare minimum of what's going to keep you from being bored, right? So bare minimum means below this, you're going to feel bored because the activity becomes too easy, right? And above that is the what we call the flow channel, right? And this is where you're going to have at the top of the flow channel is at a maximum above which you're sort of going to feel like sort of um, overwhelmed, right? And you're like, this is too difficult, I can't do it. So you have this sweet spot, not sweet spot, like this range from your minimum to a maximum. You stay within it. Below it, you're you're gonna get bored. Above it, you're gonna get overwhelmed. So you stay in that area, that flow channel, and that's gonna help you continuously do things and stay thriving inside. So you're always feeling that you're moving forward. You're not getting overwhelmed and so on, right? Flow channel, we also talked about immersion. It involves this idea of like you're so focused in it that sort of everything else sort of becomes disconnected, sort of not disconnected, but like you're just sort of like in this zone, right? You're sort of not really focusing on everything else. So this is the idea of khushu', right? You're immersed in that experience to the point that like time just flies and you're just not really focused on anything else. You're just immersed in that experience. This can happen through storytelling, right? Storytelling, if I started telling you a story, you're gonna start imagining it. You're gonna start getting so immersed in that experience that you're sort of gonna forget everything else. When you go to a movie theater, for example, you're watching a movie, then you're sort of like you're so immersed in it, you're not really thinking about what another guy next to you is doing, right? You're not thinking about what people are doing. In fact, if I asked you afterwards, do you remember what this guy was doing, next to you? And you'd be like, no, what was happening? Because you didn't even pay attention to it. You're sort of immersed in that experience. And then by the end of the movie, you're like, oh no, the movie's already over because it was like, an hour and a half just flew by, right? Or if you're enjoying some experience, like let's say you're talking to somebody, you're spending time with your friends and stuff, right? And that time just flies by and you're like, wait, what time is it, right? So this idea of thriving, and it comes, or like this idea of immersion helps you in terms of staying focused and like staying doing the things that you want to do. But this requires you to have the alignment of your small t truth with the capital T truth, right? If it's not aligning like that, you're going to keep getting like these struggles and these conflicts and stuff, and you're not going to be able to move forward. Okay, so then we talked about sustainability strategies, and these strategies were for breaking things down, and we mentioned like certain things about like how to navigate, how to look at the end result, for example, and then sort of go according to that. Now, I'm going to switch over now to what we do normally of feedback, like just kind of getting your reflections and some feedback from you guys. So this is that. The question, how has the content thus far helped you toward a positive growth mindset? Okay, this is the question. Also, another question, how have you applied what you learned in your daily affairs? What has been most impactful in fueling your motivation and discipline toward flourishing? Now you have overview, those people that are joining us, for the first time, then I did that, just for your reference and review, inshallah. So here, if you have feedback, you guys can share. If you have reflections, if you have any thoughts, if you have questions and stuff, this is the time to do it. And then, if you notice the top of this, it says Q&A. So yeah, this is the time. Open door. The recording, when we upload it on YouTube, the recording cuts off on this, and then it resumes from after this. So this is like sort of like a safe space for you guys, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum. So I think the class has helped like reframe my mind about things that would usually bother me. but there's something that I've been thinking about lately and it's like, I guess it's the capital T truth that bothers me. And it's just the fact that, like, when you learn about the Sahaba and like the Salaf and, people like Salahuddin, uh, it's just the fact that you're never going to be as good as them. And like, really, there's like, yeah, we're never going to reach their level. And yeah, and it's like kind of guaranteed that it seems like it's guaranteed we're at least going to get punishment in the grave, you know, just from the sins that we've done. Because, um, yeah.
Okay. So let me give you let me explore this a little bit. Is it
Okay.
true that we're never gonna reach their level? Is this the capital T truth, or is it the small T truth, which is your perception?
Is it? It's a capital T truth that we're not going to reach
Is it?
their level.
Is it?
I think so.
Okay. Let me give you some things to kind of think about, uh, to kind of motivate you a little bit. Okay. So number one,
Okay.
Prophet ﷺ, this is known from the earlier generations and stuff that it was mentioned that the Sahaba radiallahu anhum specifically themselves, right? If you try to compete with, like, there was nothing that you can donate, even if you brought like a mountain worth of stuff to donate and you spent it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and all this, right? You would still not be able to match them. But the question is now, why did the Prophet ﷺ say to the Sahaba that I miss my brothers? And then the Sahaba radiallahu anhum asked, aren't we your brothers? He said, no, you're my Sahaba, right? You're my companions. And then they said, okay, well, who are these people? He mentioned about them that they're gonna come in the future, right? And they're gonna believe in the book, and they're gonna do the things, and they're gonna be that their salah is gonna be like worth a certain number of pairs of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum. Okay.
Mm.
And then he also mentioned a different time, he was like sitting and he was like, do you know whose iman is amazing, like fascinating, right? And they said the angels. So the Prophet said, the angels, they're connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they're interacting. And so why would they not believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Right? I mean, it makes sense that they understand all this stuff, they're connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and so on. So why would they not believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? He said, okay, what about the Sahaba said, okay, what about the Prophet salam? And obviously I'm paraphrasing just to give you a story. And so the
Yeah.
Sahaba they mentioned, what about the Prophet salam? And he said, they're getting connected to the angels and so on. They're interacting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that way. They're getting wahi and all that. So why would they not, believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Why would they not have that faith? So the Sahaba they said, okay, what about us? So the Prophet says that you guys have me around you, right? You guys see the miracles and all this stuff, right? So the Prophet ﷺ is saying, like, I am around you. So how would you not believe in Allah? You see the miracles too. The Prophet ﷺ had miracles. For example, imagine like you guys are invited to like a dinner event, and you guys take some some meat from from the plate in front of you, and you take it, and then another person next to you takes it, and then everyone on the table takes it and stuff, and then they keep on eating and eating, and then when you look back at the plate, it's the same amount as when you were taking it for the first time. And everyone is like filled up, like 15 people ate from it and stuff, and then everyone's good to go and stuff. But the food is like, it's almost as if even increased instead of decreasing. So why would you not believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Why would you not have that kind of iman? When you like imagine you have like a little bowl, like a cup where you're drinking some milk from, and then you drink it, and then you pass it to the person next to you, and the next to you, and then like 100 people drink from it, and then that cup has not like it has not decreased any amount. Why would you not believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when you see this stuff in front of you, right? When you go to the battle of Badr, for example, and the angels are coming to help you out, right? And you hear, like, you see that stuff happening when you're about to attack your enemy, and then something else sort of attacks him, like a whip or whatever, from the hadith of the Prophet on this, where like there's a person, like, like a person was about to attack another person, and then like this whip came, and like a whipping sound came, and the enemy sort of like had this, like, this face, like a split, whatever, and all this happened. And like, why would you not believe in this when you actually have this kind of experience? Like, you're actually seeing this around you constantly. Why would you not believe in that, right? So the Prophet mentioned about the people that are going to come later on. He said these are people that are going to believe in the message. We just, we have the Quran and the Sunnah. That's all we have. We haven't actually seen the Prophet ﷺ, and we haven't seen his miracles happening in front of us. You know, the Prophet ﷺ before, like Isa alayhi salam being, you know, bi'idhnillah, curing, you know, certain people and so on, Musa alayhi salam, and like, you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opening the sea in front of him and stuff, right? All of this, they saw these things. Why would they not believe in them, right? So for us, we didn't have that. So maybe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to, this is some discussion that happened, you know, among the scholars on this topic, on this topic right here. And the Prophet ﷺ said, you're going to be joined with whoever it is that you love. So if you love the Prophet ﷺ and Sahaba, you're going to be joined with them. Because there are certain things that we have going against them because we didn't see the Prophet ﷺ, we didn't see the wahi coming down, so we didn't have those experiences, right? So we have these things going against us. So the capital truth is different than the perception that a lot of people sort of portray forward. It doesn't mean that like everyone is going to reach the same level, like Salahuddin and stuff, because even Salahuddin himself and his mentor Nuruddin and so on, right? Even these people themselves, even these people themselves were not uh, they were not the majority of people. They were the exceptions to the general norm, right? These are the, you know, you don't, like if you go through the history in his time period, in Salahuddin's time period, how many people can you name that were famous? And yet there were scholars among them too, and those people are going to be like, you know, at high levels too, inshallah. So the point is that capital T truth here is not as simple as sometimes we sort of like, you know, assume. So it's not as simple as, you know, I'm not going to reach their level and stuff and so on. No, you could get to the same company as them. Like you could be in their company at the end of the day, because the ayah says, وَمَنْ يُطِعِ اللَّهَ وَالرَّسُولَ فَأُولَٰئِكَ مَعَ الَّذِينَ أَنْعَمَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِمْ من النبيين والصديقين والشهداء والصالحين وحسن أولئك رفيقا. That the ones who obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his messenger, then these are the ones that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to give their favor. فَأُولَئِكَ مَعَ الَّذِينَ نَعَمُ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِمْ. That they're going to be with the people that have the favor of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is, you know, when you say صِرَاطَ الَّذِينَ أَنْعَمْتَ عَلَيْهِمْ, the ones that have the path of the ones that have the ni'mah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the ni'mah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on them. This is, you know, going back to that. فَأُولَئِكَ مَعَ الَّذِينَ أَنْعَمَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِمْ. These are the ones that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given like the bounties. You're going to be joined with them. Whoever obeys Allah and his messenger, they're going to be joined in their company. And what is this company? Who are these people that got this? فَأُولَئِكَ مَعَ الَّذِينَ أَنْعَمَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِمْ مِنَ النَّبِيِّينَ والصديقين والشهداء والصالحين. النبيين are the prophets عليهم السلام, right? والصديقين are the siddiqs of the ummah, the ones that believe in this the message without, like, you know, without doubt, without, you know, all that. And then as-siddiq as-shuhada, the ones that are the martyrs of the ummah. And then was-salihin, and the righteous among in the ummah. These people are going to be in the company of those people, right? You know, the people that obey Allah and his messenger, they're going to be in the company of these four groups of people. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَحَسُنَ أُولَٰئِكَ رَفِيقًا. And like how amazing, how perfect, you know, how great this company is, right? So in this case, we understand that the Prophet ﷺ has actually, in fact, encouraged us to continue doing good deeds, because we are going to be joined with the people that we loved, and we're going to go with this company of people if we obey Allah and his messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the capital T truth is more aligned to us potentially actually interacting with them and being in their company. But we're talking about like as a group, the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, in terms of their iman, in terms of their like their sticking to the truth and so on. That definitely is at the highest level, right? And that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had looked at the entire ummah or the entire sort of mankind, and the best of the people in them, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose them to be the Prophet alayhi salam. And then the second best of those, you know, the ones after them were the ones that were the companions and so on, radiallahu anhum. And then after that, there's, you know, we have the scholars and so on and stuff like that, or the people that are righteous and they're, you know, striving hard and stuff like that. And imagine this, that from the beginning of time or beginning of the message until the day of judgment, right? You have to have some people that are actually carrying the message forward. Like the Prophet ﷺ mentioned that every generation or every 100 years, there's going to be a mujaddid that comes, and a reviver of the, you know, a reviver for the ummah, right? So this reviver is going to have this like impact on society and the world and stuff, that's going to be transformative, right? And so the idea is that there are these things there are going to be people continuously like this until the day of judgment. They're going to make sure that they're going to carry the message forward. They're going to be the torch bearers until the day of judgment. And anyone who wants to align themselves with them, they're going to align with them. Now the Prophet ﷺ also mentioned that the ulama are warathatul anbiya. These are the inheritors of the prophets alayhim salam, which means that you're gonna like these are sort of like in the company of, or in the family of the Prophet ﷺ, because your inheritors are the ones that are part of your lineage and stuff, right? So the Prophet ﷺ said the prophets ﷺ, they don't leave anything behind except knowledge and stuff, right? So the inheritance is this knowledge and stuff like that. So Abu Hurairah radiallahu anh, for example, used to go in the markets and say, there's inheritance of the Prophet ﷺ being passed out in the masjid. Go after it. So go get yours and stuff, right? Get your share. So the people would go for the one time, like let's say they went there and they found that the people are just studying Quran and they're like, mentioning like deen and stuff like that. It's pretty much deen topics as a whole, right? Um, and they're like, where's the inheritance? And this is the inheritance, because the Prophet mentioned that, right? And so the ulama also mentioned that the scholars of the ummah, right, are the ones that have even higher authority than your parents, because they have lineage, so this kind of lineage to the Prophet ﷺ, right? So the Prophet ﷺ himself, because they're the inheritors of the Prophet ﷺ. They're the ones that are carrying the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forward. So they know about about how the life works and stuff, what are the capital T truths and stuff that people need to be aware of, so that their lives can become more satisfying, more just happier in general, right? So that's the idea here. So capital T truth is more aligned to the idea that we are able to move towards that end goal, towards meeting, being in their company. Okay, so keep that in mind, that it's not as simple as like saying we're not going to reach their level and just getting like, okay, well, what level are we going to reach and stuff. It's sort of confused and stuff like that. Clarity is very important over here. The idea that you can potentially be joining the company of the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba and so on is going to help you stay motivated so that you can keep going forward. You're not going to just cap yourself at a certain unknown number, right? You're going to be like, no, I think I'm going to cap at 50% or whatever I think the Sahaba are at, or something like that, right? So don't do that, because Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala did not make it that, that restrictive. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Are there other reflections or feedback?
Do we know who this, like you said, every 100 years there's going to be someone who's like the torch
We don't,
bearer? Do we know who it is?
we don't know, by name who it is. Obviously, like, the scholars of each generation and stuff, or each 100 years, they do mention people. And they say like this person seems to be the mujaddid of our time, or they might say this person was the mujaddid of his time, and so on. And so this is something that they look into. But like, you can have your ambitions. You don't have to be a mujaddid to be in the company of this, those people that I was mentioning. There are other ways to be in their companies. Just stick the course. Try to learn as many of the capital T truths as possible, and keep moving forward. By the way, do you remember in COVID-19, the fatwa that came out on like how to pray at home, tarawih and stuff, and like how to navigate the context, and like the social distancing fatwas and stuff, right? All of those things are very connected with our lives. In fact, that's what Islam is all about, right? So the fact that you were able to socially distance in salah, right, that was allowed for you, is proof that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trying to facilitate your life for you, right? The fact that we have so much like fiqh behind, like, investments and so on, and money, for example, the fact that you're allowed to invest, there's three categories of investments that you can do. One, or like the companies you can invest in. Some of them are like, purely haram, and you cannot, that we're not allowed to invest in them. And another category are those things that are completely halal, and we can invest in them, but we're allowed to invest in them. And then there's another category to sort of like, in the middle. So then they look at it and they discuss, okay, if the majority of stuff, for example, it's halal and stuff, and there's a small minority that's not, allowed or whatever, then the scholars will discuss, how to invest in those companies and so on, and how to purify your wealth from the income that comes from them. They'll discuss that, right? And the reason that they're allowing these kinds of like, like majority okay and minority not okay companies and stuff, the reason they allow this is because one of the objectives of Sharia is to protect people's wealth, which also implies that you need to facilitate money and stuff for them. So if something becomes extremely difficult for them, they're not going to be able to benefit from that, right? So Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala is going to allow some sort of like, concessions, so that you can continue making money and stuff like that, and you can continue expand and grow and so on. And you get to a point where you're not stressed for like, money and stuff. You're not stressed for all these things, because you're satisfied now. You have the money that you need. You have everything that you need and stuff, right? And so now you're going to be able to focus more on like, more positive goals in life, for example. So this is like, understanding how like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trying to facilitate good things for you. Because again, if you have $1 million and you're sitting there like sort of all relaxed and stuff like that, you're probably more likely to like donate, for example, and that's going to help society, right? You're more likely to pray, for example, and not feel like overwhelmed and stressed out and stuff like that, because you're settled, everything, you have everything that you need, so you're more likely to be able to do that. So these things are encouraged in Islam for you to be able to like, get to that end, so that you can like be content, so you're more likely to do good things. So that's how that is going to make it easy for you, to do these kinds of things. So for example, if you want to do business and stuff, this is one of the things that's encouraged in Islam. It's like, one of the best things that you can do in terms of trying to go for the, of course you should try to do it for the end objective of doing good and like giving back and so on. So I hope that made sense. um Now, I'd like to cut off a little bit, here, so that we can continue this, so we can move forward, inshallah, because I have a few things that I need to go over. But keep, if you have any more thoughts and reflections, make sure you have them ready. You can email us directly, or you can text me or whatever, or you can also share with us next time, inshallah, on Thursday, whatever you have, inshallah. And don't feel shy. Just go ahead and connect with me if you need to. If you would rather bring it over here, no problem. If you want to reach out via email, no problem. Sister Terry can leave the email address in the chat, inshallah. Okay, so the next thing is transformation. What is transformation? How does it work? And so on. So just an overview on this. It must be based. It should be like a. There should be like a slash there. I meant to say it must be aligned slash. It must be based on slash aligned with truths. So that I need to fix that error. Okay, and it also must be from point A to point B, right? You have to know where you're going. What is the end that you're looking forward to, and where do you stand today? It must be process oriented, so you should be really focused on how you're going to get there. Like very, you have strategic, you have strategies in place, and this process should be very strategic in terms of how you try to get to point B. It shouldn't be arbitrary. It shouldn't be random and stuff. You should be very focused on how you're going to get there. You should use optimal strategies to help you get to the end. It should be purpose driven. Obviously, you need to have a purpose attached to it, because if it's just random, you're not gonna go to the end, because you don't know what the end is, right? So you need to know exactly what you're trying to get and why, so that you can actually get there. If you don't know that, then you don't know what you're going for, right? So you can't get to where you don't know. Like if you don't know where you want to get to, you can't get there, right? And then it must be meaningful. It must have some meaning attached to your life, and this is sort of related to purpose as well. And then it must be, you must have this supportive atmosphere if possible, and like the environment that you're in. So this includes a personal mindset. You should have this positive mindset that you're going forward with, and you should also be careful on what kind of allowed influence that you have from outside, what kind of influence that you're allowing yourself to sort of internalize and accept. So be careful in what you accept as your as truth, capital T truth. So if somebody is being really negative and they think that they're giving you their perception, which is small t truth, but the capital T reality is something different, then what you're gonna do is you're gonna disconnect, and you're not gonna accept that small t truth, or, from that person's perspective, whatever, because you're gonna stay focused and aligned on capital T truth. Okay, so keep that in mind. So be careful in what you let in, what you let yourself be influenced by. Don't let yourself be influenced by anything other than the capital T truth. Okay, the quickest way to learn it is Islam. So the more you learn about it, the more you understand about how life works in general, about how to navigate, like how to navigate life, how to be happy, and so on. That's the fastest way. Another way we mentioned the learning works is through the human experience, right? But that's very trial and error based. For example, in the past, recent past, there was the Me Too movement, and and all that happened after a lot of a lot of stuff that was sort of covered up, and so eventually people couldn't handle it, instead people couldn't take it, and so this became like like a change, like a um, this process of change took place afterwards, because now people couldn't take it, and it had hurt so many people beforehand. But if we stick to the guidelines that Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala gives us up front, then we don't need to go through this trial and error process and go through a lot of difficulty and hardship and stuff. The Black Lives Movement was also in the same mindset, that we want to make sure that there are certain things that we align ourselves to, and we accept, and we do things accordingly. But if we don't do that, if we sort of like just feel like whatever the majority is saying and stuff like that, that must be the truth or whatever, so we just kind of do like that, then that is not really necessarily capital T truth. So in let's say in the early 1800s or the 1700s or the 1600s and so on, before change was driven, right? Um, in that time period, there was a certain perception of what black people are and stuff and all that, and so, or the people of color in general, and how you need to interact with them and stuff. And Abraham Lincoln had this difficulty. If you look at his memoirs and stuff, or like his comments on this, so he was thinking that we should be kind and gentle to black people, but at the same time, he didn't see that black people could coexist with whites, and so he proposed this idea, or he had this idea where black people could live on a different island or a different land or whatever and stuff, right? And so like that was his mindset, because that was the sort of like the norm of his time. But he was, and even in that case, he was sort of like a visionary in that sense, because the people, not everyone accepted the idea of like, we should be nice to black people and so on, because they treated them differently. I was in a webinar today earlier, and it was talking about like how people in Chicago and like other places in the country, they were talking about COVID-19, and they were talking about like how black people are being treated, and like let's call it injustice in in medicine when it comes to black people in the healthcare, if you want to call it the industry, right? Like the sort of like the biases against the negative biases towards black people. And what that means is that, for example, like there was one doctor, a black doctor, she was talking about her experiences during COVID-19, and she was talking about how um, people were coming in with certain symptoms of COVID-19, black people, but then they were being sort of like told to go away, right? Because they said, no, no, you don't have COVID-19 or whatever, because the model for determining who has COVID-19 or not had this implicit bias in there, which assumed that certain black people in general have certain tendencies or certain like common characteristic, common symptoms that are like cold related or whatever, sickness related. So this is not necessarily different. This is not like a difference from their norm. So this was like the norm, and so the model that they were using to determine, whether to take people in or not, it had this implicit bias, and they was assuming that this is the norm of black people, and so therefore when they come in with these symptoms, it's not different from the norm. So it's not likely that they have COVID-19. It must be just something like that's regularly already there for them and stuff, right? And so she was saying that I would see them there, and they would be turned away, and then you would find them in ICU and in intensive care units because they got COVID-19, and that was a symptom and stuff. And so you might have noticed in the statistics that black communities and people, communities of color, were being impacted a lot by these things, right? So just keep that in mind, that um, the idea is that not everything that everyone says on the outside should be taken in, because whatever, even if it's the majority of the like the world, for example, right, the world population, just because they're going by something, it doesn't necessarily mean that it is capital T truth, because that's exactly what was happening in the past, but today they're saying no, we shouldn't have done that in the past, right? So keep those things in mind. And then the feedback loop is constant evaluation of everything that you're doing to make sure that you're optimized in everything that you're doing. um, Okay, now these are the last few things before I finish, inshallah. So the idea of transformation process, or what does that look like? So first thing you need to do is to have an end vision, right? This is the point B. This is where you want to end up, right? This is where you want to get to. The first thing that you want to focus on is this, because if you don't know where you want to go to, you can't go there, right? If I don't know where I'm going to go, I can start driving, but I don't know where I'm going. I'm just going to start wandering everywhere. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَيَحْسَبُ الْإِنسَانُ أَنْ يُتْرَكَ سُدًى, that does man think he's just sort of like wandering aimlessly, essentially, right? That's it. Like he's left to do whatever he wants to do, that there's no purpose, there's nothing, right? And then the ayah says in other, so to Al-Imran at the end, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that there is a group of people that they reflect on the creation of the heavens and the earth, and they say, رَبَّنَا مَا خَلَقْتَ هَذَا بَاطِلًا, that you have not created this in vain, like purposeless. Like there is purpose behind it. There's a reason why you created everything and stuff, right? So after they reflect on the creation of the heavens and the earth and the alternation of the night and day, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that these are people that remember, like these are the people that they make this comment, like none of this is like useless and like pointless and stuff, but there is an objective behind it, and that's that. And we also know our objective is وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I have not created the jinn or the ins or the mankind except to worship me, right? And worship is general, and that it encompasses everything that a person can do or think and all that, that pertains to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves and is pleased with. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like we mentioned, If you do things that are going to be beneficial to your life, for example, health and wellness and all that, getting continuously like earning money and stuff like that, donating, helping other people out and stuff, all these positive things. If you do that, then this is exactly what Allah Subhanahu wa Taala has told us to do, right? And so Allah Subhanahu wa Taala is pleased with them and happy with them, which tells you that this is what is part of worship. So if you really want to worship Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, it's beyond just praying it, and that's it. It's much more than that. So keep that in mind, okay? So that end vision is very important, and Allah Subhanahu wa Taala gave us very clear end vision, right? He gave us very detailed descriptions of what's going to happen in the grave, what's going to happen in the day of judgment, what's going to happen in the hereafter, like meaning Jannah and Jahannam and stuff. He gave us all those, and He gave us signs of the day of judgment too, so we know what to expect as we're going forward. We know when things are going chaotic and stuff. If these are signs of the day of judgment, then we're not going to be agitated, we're not going to be frustrated, and we're not going to be overwhelmed and stuff, because we knew Allah Subhanahu wa Taala intended everything to happen. Our job is just to focus on doing our part, but the end result is not our like in our control necessarily, right? What that means is, I can put my hard work in towards a certain project, right? But that doesn't mean that the exact end result that I was seeking necessarily is what I'm going to get, right? But how does that connect with end vision? Because one of the things that I have to understand is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who knows best what's best for me, right? And I don't know what's in the future for me. I don't know if I get something, how is that going to impact me in the future and so on. So I need to trust that, and I need to let Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decide what's that, right? So end vision is important. Like I wanna memorize the Quran, for example, and like let's say it's like 600 pages or whatever. So I know exactly what I want at the end of the day. Okay. Now these are things that I can actually get to, right? But whether I get to a certain college or not, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not give that as a capital T truth. So I don't know if I can do that or not, right? Quran memorization, yeah, that's possible. That's doable. People can do that, bi'idhnillah. But getting into a very specific college, that's not necessarily something that's a capital T truth. So I need to disconnect myself from those things. So envision is important, but it has to be aligned again with capital T truth, right? So that's the kind of envision I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the ones that are not like that are ambiguous or not clear. Okay, and that applies to majors and jobs and stuff like that. Okay, so you should write it down. I want to finish memorizing the Quran. That's a very clear objective, and I want it to be like done at a certain time, a certain date, and so on. They have these things called the SMART goals, and this is something that you can kind of borrow from. Although visions are the end result, right? Goals can be a little bit different. Okay, so that's important over here. You need to have a meaningful connection to it too. Don't just like randomly just like do a vision and stuff. It has to be meaningful so you can stay motivated and immersed in that experience and flourish in it, right? And you don't give up because it's boring or whatever. So that's that. Think of extrinsic and intrinsic incentives. What that means is there's intrinsic incentives, which are sort of like you just like doing these things, and so that the experience itself is your motivation. You enjoy the experience itself. You enjoy spending time with somebody else. It's an intrinsic incentive. You enjoy extrinsic. When it comes to extrinsic, they're not necessarily they're not going to necessarily confirm or like they're not going to reinforce necessarily all the time the like they're not like long lasting incentive, or they're not lasting fuels for motivation. Let me say it like that, right? What that means is you can get $100 for something, but that's not necessarily gonna like drive it because you want to do it. If the money is not there, that extrinsic motivation is not there, you're not gonna do it. But intrinsic motivations are sort of self-driven. You like the experience that you do it, even if there's nobody like appreciating what you're doing and so on. So if you do night prayers, then this is one of the best ways to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? For example, because it's something that nobody else is like, people are sleeping and so on, and it's extra that you don't have to do it, but you're doing anyways and stuff. Likewise, if you're fasting, everyone, once in a while and stuff, right? These are, two of the best things that you could do. Now, in this case, there is no extrinsic motivation because the whole idea of fasting and night prayers is that people don't know if you're actually fasting, for example, right? Or you're just pretending to fast, and like, so nobody can actually tell if you're actually fasting or not, right? But when you're praying, people can see you're praying. But fasting, nobody can confirm or deny, like, are you really fasting or not? Right? You might pretend like you're fasting, but they can't really tell yes or no because they don't know. But with reciting Quran, they can see you. But when it comes to night prayers, the idea is that you do it when nobody's, everyone's sort of asleep and stuff. So that's sort of, that idea. So keep that in mind, that this is intrinsic motivators that drives behavior, on an ongoing basis. Extrinsic motivation is not something that can help you necessarily for a long time. It can be something that, that's very sporadic and so on. Okay, another thing you need to have is a current status inventory, meaning you need to know exactly where you are right now, but you have to be honest and raw. You can't just lie about it. You can't just be sort of like, no, it's okay. I think I just kind of like lie about like where you're at and stuff to yourself, right? You got to be clear and like, okay, you know what? I really can't do this and stuff. But then I need to be honest about it, right? You have to be raw also, because not only are you going to be, not only do you have to be honest about a given topic, you also have to go deep and sort of like explore all the aspects and stuff as much as possible, right? So honesty is one thing, but hiding like, some other things you're weak in, like you can say something and be honest about it, like, yeah, I think I'm not good at this, right? But you might not explore extensively about other topics. And so be very, raw about it, be very honest about it, and so on. Okay. Also, you need to know what your skills and weaknesses are. And I said relative to baseline, but you can also say relative to themselves, the strengths and weaknesses. So if you have a certain strength that's level 50, um, and these are arbitrary numbers I'm giving you, but just to give you an idea of how to think about it, and you consider another skill set or another thing that's a little bit lower than that, then you need to make sure that like you just assume that it's something that's like a weakness, and you just work on it, right? Weakness again relative to a strength, but not necessarily that it's negative and it's like really bad or whatever and stuff, right? What you can focus on is say, okay, well, I'm not really good at this, and maybe this is what's sort of hampering my success in certain things, right? So let me work on those things and develop them a little bit more so I can move forward towards the end result, right? In the case of, and this is something that it might be a little bit easier to explain when a person, and that's why I'm bringing this example, and that is when a person is trying to work out, there's different muscles that they have to work out, right? So imagine if the person is only working out on, like, let's say their biceps, right, their arm muscles and stuff, right? Let's say they're only working out on those things. That's it, all day long. That's the only thing workout. Then their leg muscles are like tiny, right? So what happens is they have to perform a task, and so they're trying, but they're struggling because the only thing that's their strength, the main strength, is their biceps, but their leg muscles are not. So they can tell themselves, okay, you know what? I think I need to work on my legs now. So they start working on their legs. So now they can up the level from like level 5, level 10, whatever, to like level 90 or something like that, right? And they can do that for all the other parts of their body like that too. So the idea is you focus on those things that are not as like not at the same level as other things, and help them get to the same level so you can continue to do that. On the other hand, another person who doesn't think like that might be thinking, well, my I worked on my arms all the time and stuff like that. Why am I not able to do this and stuff? And like he just gets really upset. And somebody tells him to like work on your legs, and he's like, no, I should be good to go with my biceps, and that's it. I'm good to go. And so this person is not accepting capital T truth. He's not being honest. He's not being raw about this. And so this is a person who's not going to be able to necessarily move forward. So you can look at it very objectively and just say, okay, well, yeah, this is something I need to work on. Let me work on it. That's it. Very clear, very easy to understand. But accept whatever your weakness is and go forward. If you don't accept your weakness, you can't make it into a strength, right? And people who get really arrogant or like get really upset or whatever, it's a lot of this is because of insecurities, right? So don't feel insecure about it. Yeah, if there's an issue, address it and say, yeah, I have an issue. I'm working on it and stuff, and just work on it. That's it. So that's what this means, and that's what I mean by objective analysis. Also, be very objective about it, right? You don't need to feel bad about it. If you want to lose weight, tell yourself, okay, I want to lose weight. I have this thing that I have this extra weight that I don't want. Okay, accept that, move forward, and keep going, right? Don't be like, I'm not gonna talk about it and stuff because like, I'm gonna feel embarrassed and stuff. This is to yourself. Be objective to yourself. Okay. Then also you want to make sure that you have short-term goals towards that end result, right? So you know where your point A is now, you know your point B now, right? But you also need to get there. And when you drive on the road, especially when you're taking a long drive somewhere, the mile markers on the end of the side of the road, they tell you what mile number you're at, right? So they help you sort of like kind of keep track of what miles you're on, right? So what this helps you with here is the mile markers are going to help you in terms of breaking down big things into smaller chunks that you're more likely to be able to fit within your flow channel, the above your baseline minimum, sorry, above your minimum and below your maximum in the flow channel, right? So break down big projects or big goals that are overwhelming into small bite-sized chunks essentially, right? And we talked about this in the concept of chunking. So make sure you do that. That's one of the things that you want to make sure that, because if you don't do this, it's not going to work out. If you want to have khushu in your salah, there is a process. Take step by step, get there step by step. If you want to memorize the Quran, it's like one line at a time. It's not the entire 600 pages all at once. We get overwhelmed when you look at something as all or nothing, right? Don't do that. That's gonna like make you. That's gonna sort of ensure that you're not gonna get to your end result. If you want to learn Arabic, okay, learn Arabic, but understand that learning Arabic is not like, all or none. It takes time, right? Even English, for example, it's not like, people like are born with English, and it's not like they eat something and they become like, experts in English and stuff, right? It takes a lot of studying, a lot of time to go through it. You have to be in that, you have to be immersed in that experience. Even, for example, in school, you start learning it in like kindergarten or like even younger and stuff. When you're at home and stuff, you're learning the language and stuff. The first words might be like mama and baba, for example, right? But then you go to school and you learn some more, and then you do that in the next grade and the next grade and the next grade until you get to 12th grade, and then like whatever, and you continue growing in that language. You learn more vocabulary, you learn like grammar and stuff like that. It's a very like a long process, right? But it's okay, because the more you do it, the closer you get to your end goal, the more motivated you are, the more competent you feel in whatever skill that you were trying to like master, right? So yeah, like people, the kids at age 4, they're speaking. So that didn't happen when they were born, but it took time. But now they felt more comfortable to speak and engage with people because they learned the language. So if they grow a little bit older, they're going to school now. They can read a little bit, so they're going to be a little bit more confident to continue to the next step. And when now they can read, short stories, now they're going to feel more motivated to read bigger stories and stuff. Now they're going to read novels, like big novels and stuff. And they're going to like now they're going to start writing and stuff, and they're going to be writing papers and essays, and they're going to feel more comfortable with that, right? So that's the idea. Use the little goals, and this is the next few things that I'm going to talk about. Um, Make sure you look at these, break big things into small bite-sized chunks essentially, and have a strategy for success. So if you have a short-term goal, let's say by the end of this month I want to have 10% of this project done. Okay, what does that mean in terms of a daily plan, right? How do you do that? In terms of a personalized thing, a customized thing for yourself. You can have a goal like I want to memorize 10 pages a day, right? Sorry, 10 pages by the end of the month, right? Of the Quran. Okay. But 10 pages is a very non-personalized thing. It's something that everyone can have for themselves, right? But how does it personalize to you? What does that mean? It means that I take the 10 pages and say, what does that mean for me on a daily basis? I know my strengths and weaknesses, and these are different than other people's strengths and weaknesses. So how do I customize my memorization process every single day so that I can get to the 10 pages at the end? And for every person, that's going to look a little bit different. One person might do that after Fajr. One person might do like like one line every hour, for example, or something like that, right? That's what one person might do. So another person might do something different, some different strategy, but that's their personalized like the game plan for that day, right? But the end goal is still 10 pages for different people. So this is the difference between goals and strategy for success for you personally. In football or basketball, people have different like they have different plays that they memorize and stuff, right? So each person has the same end goal of winning, right? But the way they try to navigate it is different. So this is what we mean by personalization. Okay, then the next step, is it 4 or 5? Oh no, I meant to say 5 over here. So it's, yeah, it's supposed to be 5, 6, and 7. Anyways, um, visual success. So make sure that you understand what is it that how are you going to feel when you get to that success, when you get to that 10 pages, when you get to the entire Quran and stuff, right? How are you going to feel when you do that, right? When you get to that end goal. So sit down a few times a day, one time a day, whatever, and just really close, like this, you can close your eyes or whatever you want to do, however you want to reflect on this, right? But just kind of imagine how it would be like, how you would feel, what would it look like when you actually get to the end goal? What is that like? How are you gonna get there, right? Oh, sorry, not how you're gonna get there. When you get there, what does that look like? And this is gonna help you stay motivated because you're sort of focusing and redirecting your attention constantly on this success that you're trying to aim for. And the next thing is complete alignment and focus effort. This is sort of going along with that, but this is sort of more focused on like I need to get myself sort of aligned completely, right? Mentally, emotionally, like physically, I need to start aligning myself towards this end goal. And having that visualization is going to help you towards this step. You sort of imagine yourself getting to the goal, and now you're in that goal, and now you like got the 10 pages and stuff, and like you feel really happy about yourself, and now you're like you're thinking about how when you get to the 10 pages you're going to be like reciting them, like like I don't know, like for every salah that you pray 5 times a day, you're gonna recite 2 pages of those, and you're gonna keep doing that moving forward and stuff, right? So this could be your visualization. When I get there, I'm going to do this and this and this. So and this is how I'm going to feel about it and all that. Now, number five is then going to be focused on, okay, now that I know what I want and how I'm going to feel, and I'm kind of sort of imagining that every single day, constantly I'm immersing myself in that end experience, right? Then I'm going to be more motivated to do it. So I'm going to align everything towards that one effort, right? Instead of being spread out, right? And like, too thin. Now you're going to sort of consolidate your focus, your mental focus, your emotional focus, your physical focus on that one thing, right? And that's going to help you sort of continuously move forward. And again, because you're taking bite-sized chunks, you're still in the flow channel, so you're going to be able to maintain that. Now, the next thing is anchor. Anchor the wins in, and your or the progress that you're making. Anchor it in. What does that mean? It means that you sort of, when you achieve that goal of 10 pages at the end of the month, you sit back and you sort of like, you sort of appreciate, be it the night that you got there and stuff, and you sort of, get happy with that. So make sure that you feel good and content by the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed you to reach that goal at the end of the day. Make sure you appreciate that. Make sure you sit back and appreciate, acknowledge that you actually made that progress, be it then, okay? So make sure that you anchor that win in like that. Anchor means you sort of like, anchor that success, whatever, you sort of anchor it into yourself. Like, alhamdulillah, I got there now, and I want to take this moment to sort of like acknowledge that I got there. If you need to make sajda of shukr and stuff, then you can make that. The Prophet said when he heard happy news, for example, he would say Allahu Akbar, and then he would also make sujood. So if it was like great news and stuff like that, he would make sujood. So this is something that, maybe that's the way you want to go. Or maybe you're going to sit there and just sort of like, pause and say, look, alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed me to put all this effort in, and now I've gotten to the end result that I was seeking for, right? I've gotten to the 10 pages that I've had and stuff. So alhamdulillah, all this effort and stuff like that, it kind of like accumulated into like this thing. Now the glass is sort of filling up, right? The glass half full or whatever, right? So it's like thinking that the glass is like sort of like filling up now, right? Now alhamdulillah, I've gotten to this point right here, and now because I got here, I can also continue moving forward according to that. Okay. Now the last thing here is, why are we going to talk about stories of transformation? Because when you have stories of transformation, you hear about other people's transformation. When you hear how other people struggle, or like, that they went through challenges, how they sort of push themselves toward, how they manage, how they organize, how they got to success, then you're gonna feel sort of like, I can do this too, right? You're gonna have sort of some template that helps you towards it. When the Prophet ﷺ was going through stresses in life, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him stories of the Prophet ﷺ. That was what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him. So it also is beneficial for us. But the Prophet ﷺ, he found motivation, bi'idhnillah. One of the ways he found motivation, bi'idhnillah, was to go through the stories of the Prophet ﷺ before him. They went through some struggles, so the Prophet ﷺ was reminded. For example, Surah Yusuf. The Prophet ﷺ went through whatever he went through, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent him Surah Yusuf to sort of help them, and it helped him sort of navigate, because he's like, okay, well, somebody else who has something similar, in terms of his mission, right? Something similar to my mission. He went through something like this too. Ayub alayhi salam went through whatever he went through. If you look at the end of Surah Safat, or if you look at Surah Al-Anbiya and so on, right, you're going to find stories of the Prophet alayhi salam. And these are, and of course, obviously, all the other places in the Quran too, like, have a bunch of stories too. Um, but the idea is that these help you stay motivated. It helps you sort of feel that you're not alone in this thing, right? And so the Prophet's role models then became the people that came before him, of the Anbiya alayhim salam and so on. These people became his role models, and sort of like, like, sort of helped them keep moving forward. So in our case, if you want to become a millionaire, for example, there's a saying about, like, you should be with millionaires, because, yeah, if you want to be a millionaire, be with millionaires, right? If you want to, like, be a student of knowledge and stuff, then be amongst the students of knowledge. So be with the ones that have achieved the success, or are getting closer towards success. If you want to, for example, if you want to be the best NBA player in the world and stuff, right? Then you need to be around NBA players, because then they're going to be able to, like, you're going to see how they do things and stuff like that. They've sort of, like, optimized certain strategies and stuff. So you're going to start, like, copying them and so on, right? So the stories of transformation help us, because we feel no longer alone in the difficulties and stresses that we're going through. So I hope that makes sense. And inshallah, we're not going to go over stories today. We're going to start them next week, inshallah. But I wanted to give you, like, a background framework and stuff on how we're going to move forward, and why stories of transformation are going to be useful, bi'idhnillah. So in conclusion, inshallah, some takeaways. We mentioned, how to transform yourself, how to frame everything and stuff, to have this positive mindset, this optimistic, this hopeful mindset, and to keep moving forward, and to always constantly align yourself, your small T truths with capital T truths, and that's going to help you disconnect yourself from conflicts and worries and stresses in life and stuff, frustration and annoyance. None of that stuff is going to be there in your life anymore. If you accept that you're not going to be able to have everyone happy with you, okay, then that's gonna make sure that whenever not everyone is happy with you, you don't get overwhelmed or frustrated, right? Not everyone's gonna get the approval of every person in the world. The Prophet himself had enemies and stuff. He still has enemies today, right? So, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself, right? Like, not everyone accepts Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as, like, they just go against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and so on, right? They didn't. Some people like claim that they don't believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and so on, right? But at the end of the day, like, so in the end of the day, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself has, this that happening to him, right, or happening like towards, like, people are doing this towards him, stuff, right? Then who are we, right? So if you accept that when people are not happy with you, for no reason, right, you don't need to worry about it. If people disagree with you, no problem. People disagreed with the Sahaba, they had some disagreements among themselves on, like, certain, like, cases, for example. And for example, you might not like the same food as another person. Okay, no problem, right? You don't need to have everyone accept the same thing as you, right? So this is going to help you navigate accordingly. Always align yourself to capital T truths, but the source of capital T truths, from our perspective, is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's guidance that He sent down, because He made sure that everything that was necessary for us to know, He sent, and He just kept everything that was not necessary. He kept that, like, not like, He didn't send that to us and stuff, right? Or if He wanted to give some flexibility in certain contexts, He didn't specify certain things. He's kind of sort of left it general and stuff, right? So these are things to help us navigate life. So homework is to think about certain stories of people that sort of motivate you, your mentors, your like, the people that your role models are in the past or whatever. Look at those stories, see if you can connect to them in terms of their whatever challenges that they were facing, and see how they navigated them. So draw from their experiences and stuff, right? Don't try to reinvent the wheel in cases where you have precedence, right? Just borrow from what they learned and stuff, and keep moving forward. This is the idea of standing on the shoulders of giants, right? Because these giants are the ones that got where they got to, and you're learning from their experiences, you're drawing from their experiences. When you read books, for example, this is the summary of that person's, like, like, this is a summary of what the person has experienced in his life, or what they're trying to teach you and stuff, right? This is the consolidation of information and experience that they have, sort of like, that they're sharing with you. But for them, it took many, many years to go through that experience and whatever understanding that they have developed to get to that point, that it took many years. So they've consolidated this into this presentation that they're giving you, right? And so you just take from there. Don't have to repeat yourself, right? Or don't have to reinvent everything. For parents sort of, like, take whatever experiences and understanding they have, they sort of pass it down to their kids. And so the kids, if they want to try their own thing instead, that they can often, like, go through the same mistakes instead that the parents were trying to get them away from, because they made the same mistakes, or they knew other people who made the mistakes, so they were trying to keep the kids away from them. But then sometimes the kids don't want to accept it, right? So we can accept the capital T truths from other people, but if they're small T truths, like, for example, in our in Muslim society, for example, there's definitely racism as well, right? um, so we can say that this is not going to be something we're going to accept, because this goes against the capital T truth from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in those cases, you don't have to accept it. But other cases where you can actually benefit, then take those and move forward, inshallah. So with that, go and, like, find experiences, find, stories, find mentors and stuff, and find those things that you draw from, and then inshallah we can share them next time. But also, even if you don't want to share, just remember to go to those people that are, succeeding in certain things that you want, that are aligned with capital truths, and then, like, draw from them, right? So that's your homework on an ongoing basis, to keep doing that. And also, if you have any questions and stuff, then, like, let us know. And just remember to stay positive and optimistic, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intends for us everything that's good, and everything that's beneficial, and He tells us to stay away from everything that's negative and harmful to the creation in general. Okay, with that, سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. If you have any questions, you can ask, inshallah. Otherwise, we are done. I went a little bit longer today. I hope I can, inshallah, like, keep it shorter. Um, I don't need to share much new information with you now. I'm gonna, inshallah, my focus is from moving forward. Give you one strategy, and see if I, like, have, like, an example of a person who went through something like that. one or two examples, for example, and that's it. So moving forward, it'll be more like here's a strategy of navigating challenging situations, and this is how a person, other people, person, in the past or in the present or whatever, they went through, experiences like this, and how you can benefit according to that. Inshallah, that's it. So moving forward, I'm going to be more customizing like that. Right now, the content, the theoretical concept, let's say, I wanted to present is more or less uh, done now, at least until this point. And moving forward, it'll be just more like like shorter and stuff, applied stuff, inshallah. So inshallah, because of that, it shouldn't take too long. Maybe in the future, hopefully no more than 30 minutes, inshallah. Barakallahu feekum. Okay, so we'll go ahead and conclude, inshallah. And you have the email address. If you want to share anything privately or whatever and stuff, you can do that there, or you can contact me directly, inshallah. سبحانك اللهم بحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك جزاكم الله خيرا السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته